Everyone has heard of G-force. G-force, meaning gravitational force. What is this force? And if you ask what G-force is, it can be explained in one video. Here it is.
Alright, keep your head back. Stare at the light bar, read going. You alright, sir?
When you ride a gondola at an amusement park, or get on a roller coaster, you feel like your stomach is in your mouth. Your blood feels like it's being drained. It feels like your eyes are going to pop out. That's G-force. But the forces I'll talk about in a moment are much lower compared to these examples. There are forces in the universe that can shatter a person's bones or flatten a skyscraper like a piece of paper. We will look at all of these with examples. But first, let's briefly examine what G-force is and how it's calculated. 1 G-force is the most basic G-force. This is the force that keeps us and everything on Earth grounded. This is the standard value. In normal conditions, we do not feel G-force. But as in the examples mentioned, or when you get into a sports car, you feel it. For example, in F1 cars in sharp turns, they can momentarily reach 5G. You can think of this as 5 times the standard G-force. If you weigh 70 kilograms, imagine your body feels like it weighs 350 kilos at 5G. Or conversely, in 0G, you don't feel your weight. Astronauts experience this condition while they're in space. Astronauts who live in almost 0G for extended periods struggle to stand when they return to Earth because their muscle mass weakens. And even the myth that a person's height increases in space comes from this. This is not actually a myth. Without the gravitational force applied to your spine, the discs between your vertebrae open by a few millimeters, and you can actually grow a bit. But unfortunately, this is not permanent, and when you return to Earth, the discs compress back to where they were. As for how it's calculated, let's calculate the acceleration of a Bugatti Veyron and how much G-force you would feel inside it. If you take the maximum speed and divide it by the time it takes to reach that speed, and then divide the result by 9.81, you find the G-force you're feeling. By the way, if 9.81 meters per second squared is the gravitational constant, it was discovered by Newton. What this means is, if you drop an object from a height, whether it's an elephant or a feather, if you remove factors like air resistance and friction, it will fall toward the Earth's core at an acceleration of 9.81 meters per second every second. That means the elephant and the feather will hit the ground at the same time. Therefore, if we take the maximum speed divided by time, and then by 9.81, for instance, in the case of a Bugatti going 100 kilometers per hour in 1 second, it's 28 meters, and as many know, it reaches 100 kilometers per hour into 0.3 seconds. In this case, 28 to 0.3 equals 12 meters per second, and 9.8 equals 1 point to G. So, this force, which feels like your brain is being pressed against your skull, is only 0 G more than the standard gravitational force. Is that low? Not really. But when you see the examples we'll discuss in a bit, you'll understand what I mean. While a Bugatti accelerates with 1 G, astronauts in a space shuttle experience 3G during liftoff. In all examples, you can think of G-force in terms of body weight as X times G-force. In this example, astronauts feel 3 times their body weight, but something more intense is experienced by top fuel drag race drivers. These drivers can experience over 4 G. You don't need to participate in these races to feel this level. You can feel a stronger G-force by riding a roller coaster. In advanced roller coasters, especially during sharp turns, your body can be subjected to up to 6G. This means that if you weigh 70 kilos, you would feel like you weigh 120 kilos for a moment. If you're exposed to this force for a long time, you could suffer injuries or even pass out. But the real masters of this are fighter pilots. In sharp turns, dives, or takeoffs, pilots can endure up to 12G. This is why they undergo rigorous training and testing, which only a few can complete. In some of these training sessions, they are exposed to significant G-forces in machines called centrifuges. Sometimes they experience what's called G-lock. G-lock can be described as the moment when blood is forced downward in the body, leaving the brain momentarily without oxygen. Here's what happens in that case.
Keep your head back. Start the light bar, read the yard clear.
The highest known G-force experienced by a person was endured by an American pilot named Eli Beating. During the Cold War, tests were conducted with equipment called the rocket sled, as doing so in a plane was deemed dangerous. In 1958, Eli Beating volunteered for one of these tests. As the vehicle decelerated, he experienced a G-force of 80.6 for 0.0 for seconds. This is a force that could directly kill a person, but because it was so brief, he managed to survive. However, even in such a short time, it caused many of his blood vessels to rupture. This was a controlled test, and it was the highest G-force a person has endured in a controlled environment. But much higher forces are experienced every day by thousands of people. Not voluntarily, of course. When a car crashes into a solid wall, a tree, or another car at high speed, we're talking about much higher forces.
Oh my God! Oh, listen to the echo.
For instance, Kenny Brack, an Indy race driver, experienced nearly 3 times the G-force Eli Beating did after a crash. During the race, as the car was speeding, the brakes locked, and Kenny experienced 214 G. He felt like his body was 214 times heavier, about 15 tons. The crash broke nearly all of his bones, and some bones in his ankles had to be collected from the track and surgically reattached. Let's raise the level a bit more. Did you know that a much greater G-force happens in your house every day? In your washing machine. During the spin cycle, your washing machine, which is like a centrifuge, generates up to 400 G to dry your socks. Now, if we look a little beyond Earth, we encounter the power of the universe. Let's take neutron stars, for example. Neutron stars are formed from the remnants of supernova explosions, collapsing due to gravitational forces. Despite their large mass, they have incredibly small volumes. There are about 2,000 neutron stars in the Milky Way galaxy. The nearest neutron star to us has twice the mass of the Sun, but its diameter is only about 10 kilometers. As a result, its density, and therefore its gravitational force, is extraordinary. The gravitational force of a neutron star is around 7 trillion G. This means, if you somehow placed a skyscraper made entirely of steel on a neutron star, it would flatten instantly. The building would be crushed so intensely that you could gather what's left in your pocket. Finally, let's talk about the highest G-force believed to exist in the universe, the Planck acceleration. The concept of Planck time, developed by Max Planck, describes the shortest measurable time interval. He formulated it as the velocity divided by the time to reach that velocity, reminding us that the highest achievable speed is the speed of light. The Planck acceleration refers to reaching the speed of light in Planck time. The G-force that arises in this scenario is. I think it's necessary to mention that this is a huge number. It's believed that the universe has only experienced this G-force once in its history, approximately 14 billion years ago, during the Big Bang. It is believed that similar forces exist inside black holes, but this is one of the areas where science still has very little knowledge. Anything beyond this point falls under the scope of quantum physics. We'll explore that another time. As always, we'll be here next Friday at the same time. Thank you for your time. See you then.